Got 20 seconds. Come on, Amanda, go.
Keep moving. Good. Get those knees up. Explode. Good. Explode. Let's go. Up.
Drive forward. Let's go. One more. Go.
You are listening to the Fight Strength Podcast with your hosts, Phil Daru and Jason Burgos.
What is going on, fighting and fitness fans? The dynamic duo of podcasting is back. It's been too long. You should know by now, but if you don't, I am Jason Burgos, senior editor of MMAsucker.com, and of course, I am joined by my co-pilot in this journey of MMA and strength training conversation. And that is the hardest working man in the strength and conditioning industry, coming straight out of Florida and repping the Killers at American Top Team. It is the Phil Daru. Phil, what is poppin'?
I like how you put the extra emphasis on the.
Oh yeah, I even put in caps on the script because it's so important.
I know it, man. Listen, if you guys hear my son yelling in the background, I apologize. He's in my gym right now, jumping on boxes and trying to lift.
He's our third co-host.
Yeah, he's trying to lift all the weights in the gym, so we're going at a good start here. So I'm excited.
I know this week's episode is pretty big. This is a big one. I mean, in our short history, we've been very lucky in having on world champions like Tyron Woodley, Joanna Jacek to represent some massive names in the MMA world. But now we will have on a massive name from the strength training world, and that is the legendary Joe Defranco. Phil, drop some knowledge on the listeners out there who may be unfamiliar with Joe and how he has influenced you personally as a strength coach.
Yeah, well, like I said before, especially in this interview, because we pre-recorded it, but what I would say is that, man, most of anybody who's a strength coach has been at least been struck by Joe Defranco's way of doing things, and somebody has at least taken something from Joe and his approaches and his strength and conditioning programs and the way he goes about with his business and with his just his training in general. I think he's actually helped a lot of young strength coaches like myself coming up in the industry, and as far as a business standpoint, with the whole thing with the industrial warehouse type facilities there. I think he actually started that out. Because there wasn't any real like industrial warehouse type gyms other than powerlifting gyms that were around at that time. And we're talking about the early 2000s. So, I think he kind of started that off and was like a pioneer in that aspect of it, and just getting down to the grittiness of really strength and performance instead of just being like the clean, Golds or LA Fitness type gyms, where you would actually go in there, there's no air conditioning, it's like warehouse bay doors, and then we go in there and really work out hard and also efficiently. So that's sort of something like, right from that perspective, he definitely set the standard for that, and I can truly say that he is somebody that I looked up to in the industry, growing as a strength coach.
Yeah, I mean, researching, because I've heard the name, and you've mentioned them to me in conversations, and even when you made the connection with him and he's going to be on the show, like researching it is fascinating. Some of the people he's trained, I mean, how he was already a success in his late 20s, and we'll talk about, in the intro, we'll get to it, who some of the names he's represented and he's worked with, but I mean, it's really exciting because this is just a legendary. We've had some great names, and no disrespect to any of them, they're all fantastic, but this is like a next level guy, and like, such an influencer on your career. It's just so cool to get to talk to him. I mean, of course, you can listen to our previous episodes with other amazing minds in the strength training industry, like Dr. Corey Peacock, Zach Evan-Nash, Tony Ricci, Dan Gardner, and PJ Nessler, two guys you're going to be doing some work with soon, by checking out our pages on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Player FM, SoundCloud, and Google Play Music. I mean, remember, everybody, you can always, you want to get a sponsor spot on the show, you look up our Facebook page. You can see the sponsorship agreement if you want to get down and sponsor the show at all. I mean, Phil, I mentioned Dan Gardner, PJ Nessler. Everything's been pretty much finalized for the work you're going to be doing with them in California soon, right?
Yeah, we're going to be in Burbank, California at the Muscle Farm, the new Muscle Farm HQ out in California there. It'll be April 28th, and I have tickets on sale. So if you want to get a hold of me, you can email me, phil@darustrong.com. I'll send you over the link for the tickets, or if you're on Instagram, you can DM me. I'll just send over the link from there. But it's going to be good, man. We're going to have a lot of content, a lot of information. Me PJ and Dan are all coming with some good stuff for you guys and making sure that it's worthwhile to actually come out, because I know we're getting a lot of people coming from overseas and out of the state. So definitely want to make sure that we are giving you as much knowledge and content as possible so you could take it with you to enhance your athletes' performance and all your fighters. So so that's what we're doing.
I mean, it's pretty cool. I mean, if you're a strength conditioning coach or you're a trainer working your way up, I mean, these are three men who have an extensive experience in strength conditioning in general, but especially for MMA. I mean, all you guys are MMA trainers and work with some fantastic athletes and everything, and specializing in all different areas. You all have your strengths and everything. So I mean, it's definitely a worthwhile thing for anybody out there who really wants to get some serious knowledge on this part of the industry, especially in this sport in particular. But I mean, of course, we're moving into our Ask Daru segment, our weekly traditional segment. This question is a two-parter. Comes from 420 Deadlift for your YouTube. He contacted me about our Dr. Corey Peacock episode. He enjoyed it. He wanted to ask you some questions. Now, the first one is, I would love to hear thoughts on the age-old debate about road work, and is it necessary for a fighter?
Yeah, when he means road work, let me just go ahead and identify what he's talking about here. He means aerobic work, so basically long LSD work, long slow duration type exercise, or aerobic endurance exercises. So yeah, I do think it's necessary. I also think it's necessary to do it at the right times of camp or even out of camp. A lot of the times, all my fighters do appreciate and like to do quote unquote road work or just running for long distances because they like to clear their mind at some points, and they've just been doing it forever. So I don't like to steer them away from things they enjoy, especially in camp. But out of camp, I think it's even more vital to, get that aerobic base, and actually try to gain some more VO2 and also bring up that oxygen uptake as much as possible. But so I think it is important. I think that they definitely should do it, but do it at the right times and make sure that they're programming it accordingly, so they're not overtraining or doing anything that's going to skew them away from their from the modalities that they're actually working. So, for instance, if I'm in a strength block, I don't want to be doing high bouts or high frequency bouts of aerobic work, because that's going to take the organism in two different places, and then the strength that you're trying to attain may not be as optimal. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that we are putting it in the proper places throughout camp.
I mean, in my brain, whenever I hear road work, I'm thinking, jogging and that kind of stuff. I mean, does road work has it become in, strength training like more of a general term, but it doesn't necessarily mean like going out on the road and jogging? It means all kinds of things. Yeah,
I mean, it's basically, I mean, road work is jogging, basically slow, low distance, or slow, long distance. And you're basically just trying to build up an aerobic capacity. That's basically what we're doing here. Road work in general has been something that boxers have been doing forever. And it's not, I mean, obviously it's worked for them. So why would you change the clock and try to do something that's not been working, or that try to do something different that has been working? What I'm trying to say is that it just doesn't make sense to me. But at the same time, you got to take into account maybe, joints come into play, like joint pounding, things like that. Knees might be getting knees and ankles and hips, just through the wear and tear and the pounding. You want to be careful of that. Now, if that's the case, if you're starting to get tendonitis in the hip and the knee and the ankles and things like that, and you start to have aches and pains, then yeah, you want to stay away from that and try to do something else. Maybe take up, biking, or you can actually go and run on even a soft track or grass, or even if you have a beach available, you can run on the sand. And that'll actually give you some more of a lactic conditioning type work too, because you're actually activating the muscle tissue to drive through the soft sand. But other than that, man, I think that it still can be put in if you don't have any problems or issues with your body. So,
Now, his other question is also, any advice on training grip strength for MMA specifically? What would be good drills or exercises, and what would the frequency be on training things for grip and neck strength?
Yeah. So I think a lot of people miss the boat on fully working the grip in general. A lot of people like to work grip strength with a neutral ankle or neutral wrist. What basically is just you're just trying to clench your fist as hard as possible with like a barbell or a dumbbell or something like that, which farmers walks and kettlebell, kettlebell suitcase carries and things like that do come into play for grip strength. and even just Hercules holds where you're just trying to hold a weight for a particular time. But what it doesn't get the entire grip of the forearm and of the extensors and flexors involved. So what I would probably do is start to integrate more of the flexor and extensors by making sure that you're flexing at the wrist as you're squeezing down on, let's say, like a stress ball or something along the lines of that. And then you're going to curl your wrist in to actually hit those flexor muscles and extensor muscles while you're working isometric grip strength. So then you could work the entire forearm along with hand grip strength, and that'll actually help induce more strength throughout the entire aspect of what you're trying to do, as far as getting your hand and your wrist and your grip strong. So as far as duration and time, I mean, it is really subjective for anybody, but I mean, you could go with the standard 3 sets of 10 reps, or, you know, do a 2 sets of 20 reps. I think more high volume does work for these types of movements because it's such a small muscle group. These little intrinsic muscles inside of your forearms do work better with higher volumes, and they are primarily more slow twitch, so you'll get more of an aspect, more of a hypertrophic aspect of it, but also a strength aspect from it if you do more higher volume. So stick between the 10 to 20 rep range and do sets of 2 to 3 sets.
All right, friend. I hope that helps for you. It is now guest time. This week, we are truly honored to have on a bona fide legend in the strength training game. For 2 decades, this man has worked with some of the best athletes on the planet, from the NFL, MLB, NHL, NBA, rugby, UFC, even the WWE. I mean, just everything. Names like Brian Cushing, Andre Johnson, Mark DeRosa, The Undertaker, and Triple H are some of the world-renowned athletes that have gone to this personal trainer Hall of Fame member to build their bodies to elite level. His Defranco's Gym is an institution of excellence in the business. His podcast, Joe Defranco's Industrial Strength, has passed 150 episodes and is so popular, it is now streamed on radio.com. He is the man, the myth, the legend, Joe Defranco. Joe, thank you for coming on the show with us this week. It really, truly is an honor.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate that intro. I am not used to that. I just came from a house filled with kids and my wife yelling at me. So this is a very nice change of pace.
You don't get that intro with the kids, no?
No, take out the garbage.
I feel like we have such a similar style right there. I had to actually leave my house as well. My kids are going crazy. My wife's just go ahead and nagging at me, but that's good though. I guess we're sharing something similar already, Joe. So that's good.
It keeps us grounded and humbled, right?
For sure. All right, so let's get into it. Now for maybe the 2 people listening that don't know who you are, let's get a quick rundown exactly who you are, how you got started in the industry, and what you're doing now.
So the quick version is I was a football guy growing up. I was obsessed with playing football. That's how I got into training I was begging my dad to train me at 6, 7 years old is when I started playing football. So he started me out with push-ups and sit-ups and chin-ups and things of that nature. Finally brought me to the gym at, I believe I was 11 or 12 years old. And that's kind of when I got bit by the iron bug and became obsessed with training and saw how much it helped me on the field. I remember that first year that I truly dedicated to the weight room, getting back on the football field, and just, it was the greatest feeling in the world. You hit, so everybody I hit looked like they would go flying. You're just so much bigger and stronger than everybody. I was like, man, this is the coolest thing ever. And anybody who's strength trained, we've all kind of gone through that transformation, and not only physical, but the confidence it gives you just mentally, and it just helps all aspects of life. So that got me obsessed with training. And very long story short, my football career was cut short when my senior year in high school. I had a lot of Division I college scholarships, a lot of people looking at me. I went to one of the top high school football programs in the country. Shout out to Bergen Catholic in New Jersey. We were a nationally ranked team, first in the state. I was team captain, and I woke up one morning and I just had this severe pain in my low back and shooting down my leg. And it turned out I played the whole year with it. I just kind of I would take Advil like candy. I would eat 15 Advil a day, 20 Advil a day, just to get through the day, because it was constant. The pain would never go away. So I played out my senior year, but I probably was about 50%, and started to see doctors afterwards. And 4 years, 4 back surgeries, over 100 experimental medical procedures later, they discovered a tumor growing right like in the L4, L5, kind of in my sacrum, base of my spine. It was actually inside the bone and like breaking up the bone, and that's why it caused so much irritation and nerve damage. And from that day on, I realized my football career was over, and I guess that's when you say the shift was made. Instead of being depressed and crying myself to sleep every night, I decided to shift that energy and that focus and put it towards something else. And that's when I decided I wanted to help other athletes achieve their goals, because I wasn't able to achieve mine. So I studied exercise science in school, got a 4-year degree in exercise science, got an internship at a sports performance facility, worked there for 5 years, and then started my own gym in 2003, which was a 500 square foot storage closet was my first gym, and we grew it from there.
So I'm smiling right now because this is kind of like a, I told Jason this, but every coach knows this. And if you're a strength coach and you don't know who Joe Defranco is, you got a problem, man. I think that everybody should know exactly who you are. When I was about 14 years old, I got your DVDs still right here with me. So, I mean, it's been an honor to actually get to have you here, but knowing the past and knowing how you got into the industry, I started in an 800 square foot facility.
Oh,
so
wow.
I came up a little bit higher than you. I started off a little bit more.
Bastard.
Yeah, right. No, but like I said, man, that industrial warehouse type facility, man, you started that. So I just want to commend you for that, man, and thank you for setting the ground rules for us as strength coaches. You know.
No, thank you for saying that. It's so cool for me now getting old. I'm 42 now. I've been doing this a long time, and the amount of people that a day doesn't go by where I don't hear from someone like you, saying, man, you inspired me when I was 12 or I was in high school and I started watching your YouTube videos. You don't realize how many people you're reaching when you're doing it. At that time, I'm just a guy struggling. I shouldn't say struggling, because I always loved what I was doing, but It wasn't like I was making a comfortable living. As you know, this field, you don't get rich quick, so I'm just doing my thing. And now you realize how many people you inspired to make a living. I guess a lot of people, the one thing I'm proud of is I guess I made it a realistic dream where a lot of people thought you might need millions of dollars to open up your own gym, or you needed to have a connection, or you needed, some kind of investor to come along. I think I just made it a reality where people said, you know what, I could open up a 500 square foot storage closet, or I could have a small broken down warehouse or garage. If he could do it, I could do it. And now I'm seeing all these successful coaches that started by watching those videos, and it's just something I'm really proud of. So I appreciate you sharing that. Oh,
no problem, man. So getting into that, as far as influential people, who was a big influence in your life coming up as a young kid and now as a professional?
With me, it starts with I was fortunate enough to grow up with parents that supported me. I know that not everybody has that luxury. I was very fortunate that we didn't have a ton of money, middle class. My dad was a state trooper, and my mom was a school teacher. So average household as far as income, but they always gave me the support of, you could do anything you want to do. And they supported me. And during those early years in the storage closet, when I couldn't afford to have employees and pay people to help me, they were just instrumental in anything that they were able to do. Whether with my mom is handicapped, she has multiple sclerosis, so what she couldn't help physically with, she was making all the BS phone calls you need to make when you open your own business of health insurance, liability insurance, lawyers, accountants, all the stuff we don't want to do because we just want to be in the gym. That. My dad helped with the physical stuff of moving equipment and painting and all that. So
that's crazy.
Without them, there's definitely no Defranco's gym. But then my early influences in the strength game were guys like Louis Simmons. When I first discovered the West Side Barbell methods, I became super intrigued with that and started experimenting. And that was the strongest I had ever gotten personally once I started understanding his methods a little bit better. And excuse me, that's when I started tweaking his methods, thinking, wow, like if this works so well for me, if I tweak it a little bit, imagine how much better my athletes could get, how much stronger, more explosive they could get. There's a lot of carryover between what he's doing with powerlifters and what I need to do with a lot of my athletes. So he was very big in the beginning, and then I met Dave Tate going to one of those seminars, and I developed a good relationship with Dave, and he helped me out a lot business wise as well. And then from there, your circle grows as you gain some experience and start to develop a little bit of a name in the industry. But those were probably my two biggest influences in the beginning.
All right. The strength training industry feels like the tech industry to me in ways, in that new ideas and theories it's always evolving. As a novice, I've noticed flexibility seems more and more like a major priority when it comes to strength training. For example, doing cross-training with gymnastics seems a lot more common. Could you explain for our listeners why flexibility is so key in becoming a high-level athlete?
I think it's key just because all sports revolve around movement, right? It's every sport is different in that they require different movements, but at the end of the day, athletes need to be able to move. And if you don't have that adequate mobility for your sport, and you just say, for example, you're someone who likes to lift weights, so you add strength on top of a lack of movement and dysfunction, that's going to cause so many more problems down the road than if you just address the foundation first and make sure your athletes are moving adequately before you add any kind of strength training, any plyometrics, any kind of advanced everybody, the buzzword that people talk about, functional training, or more sport specific type movements and special strength training means. You need to hold off on those until you develop that base level of mobility, because all you're going to do is cause problems later on if your athlete's not moving well. So what we do is we try to look at the sport, see how much mobility is required in that sport. Not every athlete is going to require the same amount of mobility. A football player is not going to require the same amount of mobility as a gymnast or a ballerina, but you want them to have adequate mobility and then a little bit more to give them a little wiggle room in case they do get into an awkward position on the athletic field. I know with you guys, there's a lot of MMA fighters listening, MMA strength and conditioning coaches listening. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of awkward positions in MMA that if you don't have the proper mobility and you get in one of those awkward positions, you're going to tear a muscle, you're going to tweak a muscle, or you're certainly, if you don't get hurt, you're certainly not going to be able to move and develop force from those awkward positions. So mobility is the foundation. I think regardless of what your methods are, I think we all know now that you need to be able to move properly first.
I was reading an interview you did from a decade ago, and back then you were already a serious success at just 28 years old, which blows my mind. Me and Phil have chatted at times about how he sometimes wonders if his age can be a hindrance on him, because so many people expect to see an old grizzled vet as a coach and trainer, not a young person. Did you have difficulties in the early part of your career as such a young guy trying to make it?
Yeah, I wouldn't say difficulties, but it has gotten a little bit easier, or I should say a lot easier. It's gotten easier as you get older and you gain experience, because when I got into the industry, I started my own business at 27, but at 21 or 22, I graduated high school and got into the performance industry. I worked at another gym where we were training athletes, and after a year internship, I got the job and I started working with athletes. So at 23, 24, I started working with some professional athletes. So there is like a respect thing there that's tough in the beginning, because if that pro athlete is 31 and you're a 24-year-old kid trying to tell them that, they just look at you like you don't have the life experience to help them. So I feel like you need to really you have to work a little harder to earn their respect. And there you might come across some athletes that just won't train with you because they'll think, this guy's a little young. I want somebody who has more experience dealing with veteran, pro athletes. So I'm going to go elsewhere. And I'm sure I lost some clients because of that at that time. The ones I did have that did trust me, I really did work extra hard to, give them my A game, listen to them. I think it was important, and it for all the younger coaches listening, to listen more than you talk in the beginning. When you get a new client, you should be hearing what are they, why did they come hire you? What do they think they need? What have they done in the past? What has worked for them? What hasn't worked for them? Because if they're a veteran athlete, you have to give them some credit that they know their body a little bit and they know the things that worked and what didn't. At the end of the day, you might, we're supposed to be the experts, so we might end up disagreeing with some of their things, and we might give them, what we feel is going to be best for them. But it is important to listen. And just as you go along in this industry, now at 42, I don't have to prove myself really anymore. People could Google my name, and generally if they're walking into my private gym now, they're there because they've already heard of our reputation. They already trust me. So it is easier now. I don't have to kind of sell myself. We could just get right into the training at this point.
Yeah, I think that if I shaved my beard, I'd look about 19 years old.
Yeah, you do have a baby face.
So listen, I've done it before because I had my beard was, I guess it was too thick. I got a man beard. You know what I mean? It's not thin. So, I mean, it's thick. So my skin couldn't breathe at one point, and I started to get it's kind of gross on recording, but whatever.
Let him know.
Yeah. But anyways, so I had a skin irritation, right? So I had to chop it down, and I got mad at my wife because she told me I had to do it. I wasn't going to do it, but I did it anyways. And I shit you not, man, for 3 weeks, I hated my life just because of the simple fact that I didn't have my beard. I thought I lost a little bit of testosterone in that whole entire process. So that'll never happen again.
So that's where you get your powers from, Phil? I always thought it was from the muscles, but it's the beard where the powers are directed from.
The Viking beard, man. The Viking. So that's not going to happen anymore. I'm going to keep this going forever and ever. Joe, I can't pull it off like you, bro. I can't do it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm also 42, so I just unfortunately I have the grizzled look. I don't need it. I can't 5 o'clock shadow.
That's awesome. So, in your opinion, and talking about young strength coaches coming up, what should a young strength coach in the industry, what should he start out doing? What do you think is the most important thing that they need to do to get noticed or to get clients, to get athletes like that coming up as a young strength coach?
My best advice to any young strength coach listening, and excuse my language, but just do shit. Go out and do shit. And it segues it, or you segued into this perfectly with the last question, as far as experience and having pro athletes or high level athletes respect you. That comes with experience. I was pretty knowledgeable for a 24-year-old. Obviously, I know a lot more now than I knew at 24, but I would put myself up against any 24-year-old back when I was 24. But the amount of knowledge and experience and just life experience I've gained from 24 to 42, what is that? It's me working with a lot more athletes from that time frame till now. And that's why you get the respect. And now I have clients when I don't even want clients. I'm trying to pull myself out of the training business a little bit, so I could kind of work more on my business and growing the brand rather than just train people all day. Although I still love it, and I'm not saying that to kind of impress people. I have so many clients I don't even know what to do with, but more impress upon people that the reason why so many people still call to this day without me even marketing the fact that I'm training anyone is because of 21 plus years of a track record of getting results and working with athletes. So that had to start at some point I started. And for me, I started training people for free. I would train friends just to gain experience, always worked out myself. And then I got an internship where I worked for free. Yeah. And, you don't get that credit. I think too many young guys, they want to be Insta famous. They want that Instagram following right now.
Yeah.
Hold off on that. Nobody should know who the hell you are for at least the first 5 years. And I'd rather make that 10, but for 5 years, you should be so engrossed in just training athletes, training yourself, researching shit, talking to people that have more experience than you, helping coaches out that you respect and look up to, and gain all that experience. Then you could kind of come out to the world and start giving advice and marketing. But man, go do shit first before you try to claim you're an expert.
It's so funny, man, because I started this, I guess, strength coaching. I started in the strength coaching industry about 19, 20 years old, right after I got out of college. I played for Alabama State, played football, just like, I guess any other strength coach. They did something in sports, right? Yeah. And then from there, I started my professional fighting career. So as an MMA fighter, I was still training my regular clients, and I would sneak them into Gold's Gym, and I would train them at my MMA gym that I had in American Top Team. And then from there, I would train my teammates for free. And I've done this pretty much until I, opened up my own gym at 22, things like that. But I didn't have any type of high level guys until the age of 27, 28. And then people say, oh, you blew up or you finally made it or something like that. But they weren't with me for the 10 years that I was actually putting in work.
Yes.
And getting up at 4 a.m. every morning and going to bed at 12 at night. You know what I mean? So that type of stuff, when you're just like, oh man, you're so lucky that you're training, Ioana and Jacek, you're training, Tyron Woodley, man, bro, they weren't with me when I was fucking training, the regular soccer moms and doing boot camps at 5 a.m. in the morning. You know what I mean? But
nobody
I
wants
understand.
to hear that. They want to think you were an overnight success, but they missed that last 10 years when nobody cared what you're doing or knew who you were. Yeah. There's no such thing as an overnight success. If there is, it's one in a million, 1 in 10 million. If you get lucky and your dad knew somebody and you won the lottery, for the most part, there's a backstory of at least, like I said, 5, 10, 20 years of eating shit and working your ass off before anybody knew who the hell you were. That's why you're not allowed to use the expression, it must be nice, in my gym or in my.
I know it.
That expression.
Oh, really?
People say it about, if I'm training a pro athlete and they see a nice car in the parking lot and somebody walks in and goes, oh, it must be nice, wish I had a Ferrari, or that, I would say, you know what? Because what they had to go through to get that Ferrari, if you would never, there's a reason why you don't have one and they do. We all have the same 24 hours.
That's it. That's it.
And there are parts of life that aren't fair. There's genetics involved and other things, but for the most part, you have to work your ass off consistently for long periods of time to make it in anything.
For sure, man. All right, so like I said, we have a lot of listeners that are in the MMA world, a lot of coaches, a lot of fighters. I know you work with Dan Hardy. All right, right before. So before, let me go ahead. I said Ed Hardy, and we were off air, and I messed that up. But he was wearing a lot of Ed Hardy shirts back in the day in New Jersey. So I have to say this, man, because I'm not gonna let that slide. I'm gonna go ahead and call myself out. I said Ed Hardy. My bad, Dan. I didn't mean to say that. But yeah.
By the way, I don't know if you know Dan Hardy, one of the greatest guys I ever met. That was one of the top highlights of my strength and conditioning career to this day. Was getting able to work with Dan. He's such a good dude.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, you were with him a little bit before he fought GSP, and it wasn't like a full camp. Like you said, he brought over, I guess you were working with, he was working with a rugby guy out in London, right? Or is it?
Ali Richardson in England. They were out in England, and Ali worked with rugby teams and MMA guys, and he just couldn't get out to New Jersey for, Dan wanted to get acclimated because the fight with GSP was in New Jersey. So he came out here 3.5 or 4 weeks early, and I helped carry out that final month of preparation because Ali couldn't leave England at the time, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So that was good. I mean, I think we've seen some of the work on the countdown. That was when they first did the countdown, I believe,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
One of
yeah.
the first
Those are
ones.
like UFC primetime shows.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now that you have Mickey Gall, a young up-and-coming fighter, mainly known for beating up what's his name,
CM Punk.
Yeah.
but the kid is a real talent. Like he
Yeah.
really is legit. So, what was it like to get a full camp with him, and what was your like experiences going further from that as an MMA perspective?
Well, I love working the few MMA guys I've gotten to work with. I absolutely love it because it is a challenge, as you know, better than anyone. There's just so many different things they need to be good at, and I enjoy the process of trying to figure out, put the pieces of the puzzle together, and help these guys out as best as I can. It's not like they just need to be strong or they just need endurance. Like the amount of skill they have and then the physical preparation involved is unlike any other sport. So that was super fun and cool to get more involved with. I still wish, I mean, I had him for a full 8 weeks, but to me, that wasn't even scratching the surface. Like now I've continued to work with him. He took about 2 weeks off, and now I've had, man, I think we've just completed 12 weeks together of training from his last fight, which now I feel like he's making real progress that he needed. And so I guess the general thing I will say, and this isn't even Mickey specifically, but getting more into MMA strength and conditioning, the one thing that I was kind of baffled about, and you could probably speak to this better than I can, is just the mistake that so many fighters seem to make in our world of strength and conditioning, not the skill training. And there's a lot of skill they need to acquire, but they all try to turn their strength and conditioning work into conditioning. You know, everything is a 5-minute circuit.
Yeah.
What I found with Mickey, and now I'm glad we had more time because 8 weeks, we didn't even scratch the surface. One of the things he needs is just general strength. Like, and this, I love Mickey, and he knows this isn't a put down to him. Like, he needed to get stronger. He was just, generally, he was weak, but he was, you know, it seemed like everything was, you know, yes, you need to be in shape. It is super important to fight, you know, 15, 25 minutes is unlike anything else in the world. But you also have to dedicate some time to training just for strength and power. And I think too many MMA athletes, they might incorporate what they think is a strength or a power movement into their programming. Like they'll say, well, I do box jumps, right? So they think they're getting explosive, but the exercise alone doesn't determine the adaptation. So if you do box jumps, but you do them in 5-minute circuits where you're jumping on and off the box, sloppy, you know, pounding onto the ground, you're not going to develop your explosive strength that way. So you're going to continue to be the same, you know, weak fighter that you are, non-explosive, whatever it may be. Like, you just need to dedicate some time to true strength and power development, which is separate from conditioning. You need both. And just generally speaking, that was the thing that caught my attention first, was like, man, there hasn't been a ton of time where he just focused on getting his body stronger and moving better as well. Just basic. He's incredible on the ground with like where he is comfortable with jiu-jitsu and the ground game. Like he could move well there, but his general movement wasn't where it needed to be. Like he skipped over the foundation kind of.
Yeah, and that's the problem with a lot of the fighters nowadays, is that they're stuck in those sport-specific movement patterns because they've been doing it for so long, and it's efficient for them. But and it's more comfortable for them now.
Yes,
they want to train their sport, and even they love the sport-specific, you know, quote unquote sport-specific exercises because it's more identifiable for them for a transferability purpose. But at the same time, they don't have a general fitness base. So we have to develop that GPP. And I actually do a good job at educating my guys, and a lot of them are veterans, so that helps out a lot too, because they've been through the ringer, and now they know that they need to preserve their body through proper means of mobilization and stabilization, things like that. So I've been doing a lot of FRC type style work with them, a lot of DNS principles, intra-abdominal pressurization type techniques, but a lot of stuff that I get from Chris Duffin that I've worked with him. I work with him primarily on that. And then, Dr. Spino over there for functional range conditioning. I do a lot of stuff like that. But that primarily is the basis of their movement quality. And then from there, I do develop a strength base and a solid aerobic base outside of camp, which I think that definitely carries over into fight preparation camp, where in 8 weeks out, their focus is going to be solely on, and to be honest, I can't compete with a lot of the skills coaches. So their focus is going to be on technical, tactical, and skills training. So for me, I have to make sure that they're physically capable of doing that once they get into camp. And then we can go ahead and fine tune it, once we get into camp, and we can peak them accordingly. But I don't want to overwork them in general preparedness when they should already be ready for that, in a sense. But most of the time I don't have that opportunity. That would be ideal.
And I think that's the key. I don't want people to misinterpret what I'm saying as far as that strength base and that basic foundation. There's different focuses for different times of the year. And that's why I guess I got to work with Mickey for a full training camp, quote unquote, but 8 to 10, 8 to 12 weeks alone isn't enough time to develop, to build strength, because at that point, I agree with you 100%. For most fighters, that last couple weeks, your main focus has got to be on the technical, tactical aspect of the fight. The strength should have already been developed, and then you're trying to maintain that strength you gained during the earlier stages of the camp or outside of training camp. Then you want to just try to maintain that best you can while you are really focusing on the skills and the tactics that's going to go into that fight. I was trying to build that strength while in his final last weeks of preparation, and that's why I'm more excited for when the next fight is announced, because I've been able to develop that a better. He's still not where I'm always trying to help get these guys better, but he's developed a much better foundation going into this next camp, whenever it may be. Because I always say this with strength. Everybody, you talked about those sport-specific movements and what people might consider more quote-unquote functional for fighters. You'll see things like we call them shot put med ball throws into a wall, say, for punching power, or different types of weighted box jumps, and all these. They love those exercises and they look cool on Instagram, but you need a base level of strength before you could develop power. Explosive power is your ability to display your strength quickly. If you're not strong, if you don't have a foundation of strength, you can't be powerful. You could be strong without being powerful, but you can't be powerful and explosive without first having a base level of strength, because the definition of power is the ability to display your strength quickly. If you have no strength, you can't display it quickly. So you need those outside of camps. These guys should be working on that, along with a basic foundation of aerobic fitness. I agree with that 100% as well. And then that last 8 to 12 weeks should be more focused on the fight, because you only have so much. We use the example of a glass of water. You only have so much energy reserve. Every time you work out, think like you're pouring some water into that glass. And when that glass gets overfilled, if you just keep pouring in there, it's just going to overflow. And that's when either performance is going to start to drop, or worse yet, that's when injuries occur. So you need to know just the right dosing of strength, conditioning, mobility, fight-specific work, which is a lot going in with these guys. It's not just one thing. They have jiu-jitsu and boxing and wrestling and grappling. There's so much involved. You need to dose everything properly, and you can't just throw it all in during that final 8 weeks of fight prep.
Yeah. we had Cameron Joss on. You know, that's your pupil, I should say.
Yes,
You're the boss. But we had Cam on. He was talking about you guys look at training as you guys are like the mixed martial arts of strength and conditioning. And it kind of resonated with me as far as, you know, making sure that you're getting all modalities and you're not living in absolutes, and you're actually understanding the processes that need to go in hand to build a solid foundation of performance for all athletes. And that's something that I think everybody should take home, is not to get too caught up in one, training modality or training like niche, I should say, and really encompass everything and take something from everywhere. You know?
And everything should be based on the athlete. What sport does he or she play? You know, what's the time frame that you have with them? What's their strengths? What's their weaknesses? What's their goals? It shouldn't just be, I like to lift weights, so any athlete that comes to me, you know, we're going to have them lift a lot of weights. That might be part of it, but every athlete that walks through your door, there needs to be some kind of an evaluation process and some kind of an analysis. Anybody that has an athlete walk into their gym and they start training him that day, they have their program ready, they're doing it wrong. Because how do you know where they're at? You know, how do you know what their strengths, their weaknesses are? With us, it starts with a conversation first. Like I said, you want to hear from the athlete. What do they think they need? What have they done in the past? What has worked? What hasn't worked? How much time do they have? Why did they walk through your doors? There's got to be a reason why they're seeking you out.
Yeah.
Then after that initial conversation is done, you know, for us, just a general overview of like a first day, we'll put them through a dynamic warm up where I'm giving them a bunch of exercises and I got my pen and paper out and I'm observing, how do they move? You know, how's the mobility? Do they have adequate mobility? Is there any asymmetries? Is one side a little stronger than the other? Is one limb a little less mobile? How's their general fitness and just their overall aerobic capacity? All those little things you're getting just from the warm-up. Then we'll do some basic strength tests. For a weight class athlete like an MMA fighter, we'll test their chin-ups because that's a great indicator of how strong you are in relation to your body weight, plus just grip strength and pulling, being able to control your opponent is an important aspect of fighting. So we'll test chin-ups, we'll test some unilateral strength. One of the things we do is a force velocity profile, very basic. We'll have them perform a vertical jump on a jump mat, have them just, you know, squat down and explode up, give them 2 or 3 tries, and then have them perform a static jump where they squat down, pause for 3 to 5 seconds, and then explode up. And we see what the difference is there. That'll show you if they are a stronger athlete or more reactive or a pretty well-balanced athlete. Generally, the regular vertical jump, the jump with the counter movement, should be about 3 to 5 inches higher than the static jump in general. I'll give you an example. So in Mickey's case, they were exactly the same. So that showed me he needed more. On paper, you would say he needs to work more of his reactive abilities. You want to really train that stretch shortening cycle and do more explosive type movements. But his regular vertical jump was also what I would consider pretty low. Yeah. So to me, that said, all right, he needs that foundation of strength, but he also, that alone is going to help with his power. Once we get more of that foundation, we're going to have to work more reactive abilities. So that helped me design his programming. Now I'm not just giving him exercises that I like. I'm tailoring exercises made to his strengths and weaknesses to help him become a better fighter, hopefully. Because again, what we do in the weight room is all GPP. There's nothing there's no one exercise that I could say definitely carries over to the octagon or, you know, or to a fight. But I could take those general qualities and say, if this guy has good martial arts skills, and if they're in the UFC, they have some high level skills. If I could generally make him, in Mickey's case, if I could get him more explosive and stronger, he knows how to use that strength in a fight, you know. So that's the key. It's not just giving everybody blindly the same program. It should be tailored towards the evaluation process, that athlete's strengths and weaknesses, and that's why we kind of consider ourselves the mixed martial arts of training. If somebody couldn't move during that first session and they got the flexibility of the Tin Man, 80% of our time on mobility, and strength and power might be just 10 or 20%. Yeah. In his case, he moved well. There's a couple areas he needed work on. So, movement became maybe 30 or 40%, and strength and power took more of a precedence. I felt that would have the best carryover, for him. So that's just a little insight into, it's not a one-size-fits-all type of program.
Yep.
I had a set question, but since you brought up Mickey Gall, I was curious. It seems like an issue with a lot of young athletes, be it MMA, like Kristaps Porzingis in basketball, a lot of players in football. When they're young, you have to put muscle, but MMA is an interesting sport in that you're having guys that have to meet a certain weight, and they have to cut weight. Is there a fine line you have to walk in terms of you're trying to make a younger fighter stronger while keeping them in range of the weight they want to fight at?
Yes, 100%. You need to. The methods are going to be a little bit different, or a lot different than a bodybuilder who's just looking to get bigger and stronger to pack on some muscle. Like, they need functional muscle, and it doesn't even have to be muscle. It's strength. So I keep saying one of my goals is to help Mickey develop better strength. So there's a huge neurological component to that. So maybe a lot of people, when they hear the word strength, they're thinking heavy lifting and power lifters that are big and muscular. But when you're dealing with weight class athletes, we're doing more things. Like with Mickey, I would have him do more sets but less reps, and I would give him full recovery in between sets. That's one way to help develop strength without packing on. It's not the most optimal way to pack on muscle. It's more developing strength through neurological pathways. You could do concentric only type lifts, like something where we would do trap bar deadlifts with chains for 1 to 2 rep sets, where he would stand up with the weight and then drop it, because a lot of hypertrophy gains are associated with the eccentric component of lifting. So, and soreness as well. So as the fight gets closer, this is just kind of general advice for all fighters. It might be a good idea for all fighters, whether weight is an issue or not, is to focus a little bit more on lower reps, concentric only type movements, because they could help you from a neurological standpoint maintain or gain strength without packing on muscle as well, because that's obviously key. If he gets stronger but he gains 20 pounds, I obviously didn't do my job. So that was another factor that's extremely important. And of course, then that brings in the whole conversation of nutrition. That's super important. And Phil, you met Dr. Tom Bilella.
I gotta get Tom on.
So right. he's your next guest.
He's been trying to get me, man.
And informative.
Listen, he's been trying to meet me up because he comes down to Boca. Yeah. And I'm like, man, and my schedule is so hectic. I feel so bad, man. But I'm definitely got to get him on the podcast, because he is definitely he's a wealth of knowledge, but definitely a character too, man.
Yeah, so he is New Jersey as New Jersey gets. Whether you take that as a good or a bad thing, that's what he is. But I got to give him, as much as it pains me, I do have to give him credit, because he certainly doesn't need a boost to his ego. But when you talk about weight class athletes needing to get stronger and more powerful while their weight either stays the same or you have to lose weight, nutrition is as important, if not more, than the training methods. I could be doing everything perfect from a training standpoint, but if Mickey's nutrition was off, he's going to end up gaining weight, and the training's going to be for nothing, because he's not going to make weight. So that Dr. Tom's involvement is huge. We have everybody get blood work. He does a full comprehensive metabolic panel where we're testing things like liver and kidney function, and thyroid function, hormone levels, the C-reactive protein and inflammation in the body, all that stuff he's checking. We're doing food sensitivity testing. A lot of people don't realize that there are foods that might be considered healthy. Generally speaking, you would say that's a healthy food.
Yep.
It might cause
Allergies.
fatigue, bloating, inflammation, whatever in your body. So figuring all that stuff out is huge, and that went hand in hand with Mickey's programming as well.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
Yeah, the other question was, you have a very popular podcast, Industrial Strength. Like I mentioned earlier, you're now 150 episodes deep into it. What made you try your hand at doing podcasting, and what has the overall experience been like to get your ideas and thoughts on strength training out to such a large audience now?
I think that was it. I moved over to podcasting, or I shouldn't say moved over. I kind of added it into the mix as I wanted to try to. I still love training athletes, and I still do it. Now, I would say on a weekly basis, 25% of my weekly routine is on the gym floor training other athletes, and 75% is more training trainers. We have a certification, my podcast, other a lot of educational type materials out there, because I realized as I got older, and also having kids had a lot to do with this. Having a gym, man, when you have a gym, at least for me, I live there. As much as I know they say a good business mind, you'll be able to, delegate and set yourself up, and you should never have to be there. For me, when I had my large gym, I lived there. I was there all day, every day. I was on the gym floor, and I realized I wanted to set myself up where I could still reach and help as many people as possible, but have a little bit more of a flexible schedule where I could watch my kids grow up. So I started to see the trend that I was like, man, this podcasting thing seems like it's going to be big, because I know, like me and Phil, you just said, we're all busy. So watching a video on YouTube is great, but I need to sit there and watch it. Or, maybe if I'm doing cardio in the morning, I could watch it. But if I'm driving to Connecticut to train Triple H and Stephanie McMahon, and I'm in my car for 3 hours, I can't watch a YouTube video. So audio is so much better, because you could multitask. You could listen while you're lifting, while you're driving, while I'm writing programs. So I said, that's a good way for me to reach more people without having to necessarily do more work. In training, the only way you reach more people in your gym is to train more people. You do more sessions, and you stay there later, and you get there earlier. Where I was like, man, I could talk for an hour and a half a week, and the possibilities are endless. Like, that could reach millions of people, and it stays online forever. That episode I did a year and a half ago, you could go back and listen to today. So that was the thought process behind it. It was, how do I reach more people and help more people without necessarily having to just work more hours? That's just the truth behind it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's do this. I wanna go ahead and really, because I get a lot of young strength coaches in the industry. They DM me, they ask me questions about what they should start off with, what they should be doing. But in your opinion, and your opinion does definitely matter, what do you think the biggest mistake coaches are making nowadays as you see the industry kind of evolve?
Young coaches when they first get started?
No, just in general, just regular coaches in general. Like, what do you see that you're like, man, that's kind of stupid, or like, that's not really going to make sense,
Well, I think I always say, like, the internet is the greatest thing that ever happened to our industry, because, guys like you wouldn't have, known me, and I wouldn't. Now I follow your Instagram, and I'm able to watch the stuff you're doing with Ioana. I love watching all your stuff and watching how you progress your athletes. Like, so it's amazing that I could watch and get an insight on what you're doing in Florida while I'm in New Jersey, and we could exchange information. It's as good as it gets, but it's also become the biggest problem, because everybody is trying to make a name for themselves. And now I think we're not doing, in general, there's way too many coaches that aren't doing what's in the best interest for their athletes. They want to make a name for themselves on Instagram or on Facebook or wherever their platform is. So they skip over the foundation. Some of the things we briefly touched on is maybe the less fancy things, the less sexy things like aerobic conditioning, general strength training, mobility. Like they'll skip over that because they want to put a really, really cool exercise on Instagram and be validated by everybody, on Instagram that they're so smart and they're so unique and their training methods are so much more advanced than mine or yours. And meanwhile, what the hell did that do for that poor athlete who thinks he's doing something cool and productive and hard, but in the grand scheme of his training, I always say, if I walked into your gym and I said, explain to me, why are you doing that? What's the reason? What's the purpose? You should be able to answer that question for every single thing you do from the start to the end of your workout. And most of these Insta-famous trainers couldn't answer that question.
I like Insta-famous. I like that.
Yeah. You know what's funny, man, is that I make sure that I write down exactly why I'm doing it and why it fits into the program, even on my Instagram videos. Like I make sure I try to drive that in there because I see a lot of people, and people hit me up all the time. They're like, yeah, I tried that exercise before. Like, it worked, but, it hurt my back or something like that. I'm like, well, that's because you don't know why the hell you were doing it. Like, you don't understand. That's how you set your program, is just seeing what I do on Instagram and then you go ahead and try it. Like there's
and they don't know. And you do a great job of that, because I've seen you'll put, hey, this is what I have you wanted doing during this phase. We are in this phase of her training. Yeah. So, but unfortunately, again, I think even that people probably, you have these lazy trainers that'll just watch the video and they won't take the time to read the 3 paragraphs worth of knowledge you've given them, which is such a blessing. Like if you're a young coach, a guy like you, if I want to get into training MMA fighters and I got a guy like you posting free information, you're over there at America Top Team working with the greatest fighters in the world, providing free information every day. And I'm too lazy. I just want to grab the best exercise that I saw in your video. I'm not even going to read the description you wrote, because I have to quick go run and make my own video so my followers could think I'm cool. Like, that's the freaking problem.
Yeah, nah, I hear you, man.
But hopefully those people don't last. As you know, this industry is a grind. It's not a get rich quick. I truly do feel like you have to love it, because you'll eventually be exposed. And the other thing that goes hand in hand with that is, as far as mistakes, and I think this is more of a lack of knowledge as well, is trainers and coaches will try to make up for their lack of knowledge by just having their athletes do shit that's really hard. And I always say, any coach could make you tired. Any coach could make you throw up. It is the easiest thing in the world to do. Put on a weight vest and do burpees for an hour. You'll throw up. Like, you'll get tired. Did that help you become a better fighter?
Unfortunately, the fighters like that style.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's the problem that we have.
Wow.
But here's the thing. I didn't even like to finish my quote. Any coach can make you tired. Any coach can make you throw up. Not any coach could make you better. Not any coach could help you reach your goal. So everything, you have to look at the big picture. There might be, and there probably is, a time and a place for weight vest burpees until you puke, or 5-minute set burpees, because I put down those 5-minute circuits, but they do have their place. Like a 5-minute circuit for an MMA fighter, I believe has its place. It's just not. You need to put it in its right place. Don't have them do a 5-minute circuit of box jumps, burpees, and med ball slams and tell me this is the explosive power circuit. That would be more, metabolic conditioning, general conditioning. If you want to call it sport specific, as far as the duration, they have to fight for 5-minute rounds. So you want them doing work for 5 minutes at some point in training. I prefer to get that in the octagon or on a wrestling mat, or I like more of that, a little more specific as far as the conditioning is concerned. But there's a time and a place for everything. You just need to know how to implement it, and that's what I feel like. It's very easy to disguise your lack of knowledge just by kicking the shit out of somebody, because and they go, oh man, DeFranco, that workout was hard as hell. Like, he kicked my ass. All right, but was that did that make you better? What was the goal of today's session? If it was to get you stronger, we failed. If it was to, more of a mental, hey, I want to push him, I want to see where he's at mentally, is he willing to push his body past his limits? Or, we need to see if he could move and do things for 5 minutes at a time. All right, well then now that might have had some merit. But you need to know the reason and the purpose you're doing anything. And then at the end of the training cycle, at the end of the training camp, did you get to your goal? If not, you did something wrong. You can't just go by how you felt after a session.
Yep, true.
Phil, I mean, I know you gotta go soon. Do you wanna, Joe? Do you still have time so I can ask you more questions if Phil has to go?
Yeah, I'm still good.
Phil, what do you want to do? You want to just sign off, say byes to Joe, and I'll continue on?
I got about 5 more minutes.
All right, so do you want to ask the next one? The one you had?
Well, basically, he already answered it pretty much. I mean, it's developing strength. But what I was going to say was, what do you think, as far as combat sports goes, what was the aspect that you believe is most important to develop from a physical preparation standpoint? And that's pretty much what we've hit before, right?
Yeah, I think the short answer would be the individual athlete, their style of fighting, and then what they need the most. Again, the mixed martial arts of training would be evaluate that athlete. Where are they strong? Where are they weak? Kind of fill in the gaps there. But also, and this is a whole nother conversation, but you need to know the individual athlete's style. So like a Nate Diaz is probably not gonna test well in the strength department, but that's never going to be his game. Now, I think, would he benefit from getting a little bit stronger? Probably, but you don't need to say, hey, that guy lacks strength, so we need to just hammer strength, because that's not his fight style either. Like his thing is the cardio and the ability to go and his toughness. So there is always that exception to the rule. I don't want what I'm saying to be misinterpreted, where like whatever your weakness is, just make that your strength, because sometimes it's better for higher level athletes to just double down and triple down on their strengths, and the weakness, if you know it's never going to be a strength anyway, you might have to just say, you know what, that's not his thing, that's not his style of fighting. Again, in that example, he's not going to be a jacked up, look like Tyrone Woodley looking guy that's strong and powerful. So we don't need to focus too much time on it.
Yeah, and you know what, I think that goes both ways in such, because like a guy like Tyron, where he did in the beginning of his career get tired throughout the later rounds, he did develop a solid aerobic base outside of camp, which ended up actually helping him. Obviously, he turned some of his fast twitch fibers into slow twitch fibers, but at the end of the day, this is a mixed aerobic system sport. So for him to mix that up and still have the ability to knock somebody out, but have the ability to do it for 5 rounds, it made it better. But I understand what you're talking about, because I do have fighters in general that, it would kind of be a hindrance to them if they try to do some strength training or anything like that, when their game is more catered towards being methodical, being more of like a grinder, or just being as far as like what you say about Nate and Nick Diaz is they like to pick you apart time by time. So at the same time, they wear you down. And if you can keep that going, you can accelerate that perspective, then that will be better off for them. And they already have the conditioning, because that base of conditioning will carry you over into the fight game. And then if you have that conditioning, because of their style of fighting, it's just more optimal for them to be successul, I think.
I agree. And that's why the older I get, the harder it is. And I hope I don't confuse people, but there's no one answer. Like, unfortunately, if you interviewed me at 23 or 24, I would have said, this is the best way to train mixed martial artists, and they need this percentage of strength, this percentage of endurance, this percentage of this. Now it's like, tell me the individual athlete, and then I'll give you my take on each individual athlete, because it's always going to be different. There's always exceptions to the rule. The answer is, it depends on the individual athlete and the situation.
100% of the time, I believe it's going to be subjective to the athlete, and it's always, it depends. And if you're a good strength coach, if you're understanding the processes, you know that the most of the time the answer is going to be, well, it depends.
Yeah, it just, that's experience. Unfortunately, it's not. Maybe it doesn't make for as good of a podcast because the young strength coaches want the answer, like, what's the best exercise?
Yeah.
What should I do with, but it's, unfortunately, it depends on the athlete. And it's as different as some athletes, I would double and triple down on their strengths. Some I would really focus on their weakness because their weakness is really holding them back. Some it's a mix, like Tyron Woodley. That was a great example. Like he did improve his conditioning, but it didn't take away from his strength, or if it did, he was so much stronger and more explosive than most of the people who's fighting that if he lost 5%, he's still stronger and more explosive than almost everybody who's fighting. So that was an area where bringing up the weakness did help him. So like it's an individual case. It just is.
I mean, you've worked with professionals, and like we mentioned before, NFL, MLB, NBA, all over the place, pro wrestling, UFC. I mean, these are people that sometimes have some massive egos. Without giving specifics, do you have any nightmare scenarios of really difficult athletes to work with? And on the flip side, you've already mentioned Dan Hardy, real enjoyable athletes to have worked with in your long career.
Here's why I don't, because the way my gym is and how it's been set up. Like I started out in a 500 square foot storage closet, was not fancy to look at. Like most people walked in and would look around and go, this is it. Like, this is really the gym. By the way, I didn't have pro athletes walking in the gym right from day one. It started with high school kids and then a couple college kids, and then a couple college kids actually became, I've had 7 kids that I started training in high school, trained them through college, and ended up making it to the NFL. So then, more NFL guys and pro athletes started coming through the doors. But I only started having pro athletes show up on my doorstep after I was in this game, like we talked about before. I had those years where nobody, quote unquote, knew me, but in my hometown surrounding areas, people knew who I was, and I was in the game 5 or 6 years, getting results with my clients before pro athletes started saying, hey, that DeFranco guy, I've been hearing a lot of things about him. Let me go check him out. So because I never really, I didn't take out ads in the newspaper. I don't really market. It was all word of mouth. The type of pro athletes I was attracting were more of the blue collar, hard workers, they're not the types that had things handed to them. A lot of my pro athletes, I've had my fair share of like first round draft picks in the NFL, but the majority of my NFL clients are 7th round draft picks, free agents who never even got invited to the NFL Combine. They had to like scratch and claw their way there. So that it's more of a humble background. Most of the pro athletes that I've dealt with, so I didn't have to deal with that. And the few that did come in, once my gym became really popular and kind of world-renowned type of brand where athletes would just come in because they heard the name, I had a couple that had that prima donna attitude. That first session, they would think like I'm going to make them a protein shake, have their shake ready, work out, and they coddle to them. Yeah. And we don't at my gym. So the few I had that I just had a bad feeling during that first workout and just that negative energy, it's the funniest thing. None of those guys showed up for the second session because they weren't comfortable there. So like the environment was such that I don't care if you're a high school kid or you're making $50 million in the NFL. You come here, when the workout starts, we're all equal. We all work our asses off. We all respect each other, and you get your workout in, you get the hell out of here. If you're going to have that prima donna attitude, like you're above everybody and I'm going to coddle towards you, this isn't the gym for you. Yeah. And most of those guys just never came back. So I didn't have to deal with them more than once or twice in my lifetime. So the gym itself, I think, kind of guarded me from attracting those types. Because if you're into being coddled, you're gonna walk into my gym and be like, "Yeah, screw this place," and walk out.
All right, so last question, so we can wrap it up. I know Phil's got to go. So many people know you, in this connection with this industry. You're a superstar, strength and conditioning, a legend. But what are some of the things about you fans may be surprised about? For example, what's some personal interests, passions away from strength and conditioning and sports in general? Like big opera fan, ballet, something like that.
Unfortunately, I don't have not a big opera fan. I've been to one Broadway play. It was and it's pretty stereotypical. It was A Bronx Tale.
Nice.
It was a one-man show with Chaz Palminteri. How do you pronounce his last name?
Yeah,
Chaz?
it's that. Yeah.
He did a one-man show on Broadway, the Bronx Tale movie, which was the only Broadway play or show I've ever been to. So. The thing is, I'm not a well-rounded guy, and I think maybe that's why I've had success in this industry. This is my hobby too, and I wish I had a better answer. But my wife will tell you, my kids will tell you, if you made me leave this industry and I had if I had to go pump gas for a living, when I went home at the end of work, I would be reading training articles and setting up a gym in my basement. It's like. That's what I like to do. It's my hobby as well. So I don't really have a better answer, unfortunately.
Yeah. So we're not gonna find out that you're a big like Kanye West, Lil Wayne fan, going to concerts, nothing like that.
I do like my rap music.
Give me some artists.
Pop rap guy, but but I think that's not too out of the ordinary in our industry. Like being in a gym, we listen to all kinds of music, so I've a lot of different music has grown on me. I even started, some guys come in and listen to country. I never thought I'd listen to country music, but I've even become able to stand the country music.
All right, so that's all the questions. Of course, really appreciate you coming. Obviously, there's not many people that already aren't following you on all the social media. But anything you want to let them know for the people that may be discovering you for the first time here, like your social media, your Instagram, your Facebook, your Twitter, websites, all the things they can look to just to go and find this wealth of outstanding information from a legend.
I appreciate that. I think the easiest way is just Instagram is my main social media platform. So I'm at DeFranco's Gym on Instagram. I have the DeFrancoInsider.com is a really, really informative. That's our membership community where we have thousands of videos that don't get posted online. Like Mickey Gall behind the scenes, Mickey Gall's training, all of his workouts are videos on there, PDF files from everyone from Mickey to like Triple H, training him for WrestleMania. I have his workouts on there. We have a private Q&A that I do every week, myself and Jim Smith, Smitty. We go on, we have a private Facebook group. So that's for if you're really into the information we're putting out there, the good stuff that we're doing. DeFrancoInsider.com is a good place to check out. And the Industrial Strength Show, every Thursday, I put out new episodes. You can find it on iTunes, Stitcher, or my website. I put the show notes and timestamps to every episode. So that's DeFranco'sGym.com. And that'll really take you everywhere. All my social media and everything you need to know.
All right, Phil, you know the deal. Give them your social as always.
All right. My Instagram is Daru Strong. Twitter's Daru Strong. You can check out my YouTube. I'm starting to put up more videos there too, especially on our entire camp for Joanna for UFC 223. So you can check that out. It's just Phil Daru. It's nothing crazy, but yeah, like I don't have some crazy ass name for YouTube. By the way, it's just my name. And then
mine is Joe Defranco. So
yeah. I think I
have the crazy names for YouTube. So sorry.
And my Snapchat, a lot of people like to see that. I have all like real-time videos on my Snapchat. So my Snapchat is DaruStrong1, and that's pretty much it.
Phil, how do you feel about the Snapchat updates? I'm hearing a lot of complaints about it.
I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
I'm not even on Snapchat, but I hear a lot of people complaining about it.
Yeah, me neither. All right, for me, you can find me on Instagram, Jericho Vendetta, on Twitter, Cheap Seats Chat. Of course, the show webpage, Facebook, Fight Strength, on Twitter, Fight Strength _. Remember, you can find all the episodes with legends like Joe Defranco on Google Play, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Player FM, Honestly, thank you, Joe Defranco. It's truly been a pleasure. I've enjoyed talking to you. Thank you, Phil, for getting Joe on the show. Thank you so much for coming on with us this week.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. I had a lot of fun.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
I'm Jason Burgos. He is Phil Daru. Until next time, episode 31. See you guys later.